I started playing when I was, how old was I? 13, about 13.
Who inspired you to play guitar?
Well, oh, you know what's interesting? My cousin. Yeah, I had a cousin who was into music, and he bought a musical instrument, and I wanted to play with him, and so I think I convinced my mom to get me a guitar so that I could play with him. I never ended up playing with him, jamming with him, which is funny. So even though I was influenced for kind of, just my older cousin was like the older figure, that I looked up to. But beyond that, when I actually started getting into the guitar, Metallica was so huge for me. It was just out of this world. Never heard anything like it before. Queen was a big influence. Queen was like the first rock band I got into, and it was. I hadn't heard any type of just outside you know, very super popish music, I guess you could say. Um, yeah, before Queen, it was just that, and then so Queen was a big one. Metallica, Led Zeppelin, a lot of classic rock bands. They definitely inspired me. Just seeing these videos of these people playing and emulating that energy in the music, it was just felt like everything to me.
How many songs did you write?
So that's the interesting thing about me. Uh, I know this is supposed to be like an expose on artists, but I'm, I'm like, I don't know if I'd even consider myself an artist. I just know that I like writing songs. I haven't written too many, and strangely enough, I've written them starting in my late 20s. I just didn't have that capacity before to write songs, and that's why I just played other people's songs. But I'd say I've written about maybe 10 songs now at least. Yeah.
Have you been in any have you been in any bands?
Yeah, I was in a band in high school. It wasn't too long. We jammed for like 2 or 3 months. We basically got together to play this talent show. That was a lot of fun. Um, so that was one. I stopped playing the guitar pretty much throughout my 20s. Just lived my life, went through personal struggles, and in my late 20s, I started to collaborate again. Played a session with this really great guitarist that really inspired me a lot. I think it's really important to collaborate with people who are better than you because they'll help inspire you, they'll help you see things in different ways. And um, yeah, and then there was another guy, and this guy's really talented, really talented. He's like a natural musician, what I call him. I'm more like a forced musician, if even I can take the title of musician. But I learned a lot from him too, and we jammed out a lot, and that was like in recent years, so that was good. Say two bands really.
You said you went through personal struggles before you started creating music. What personal struggles did you go through?
So I don't want to specify the details of them too much. Let's just say the 20s are can be rough. You don't necessarily know what you're doing, but you're supposed to be like an adult. And I'll just say that through all the adversity I've been through, it's made me a stronger, better, smarter, more competent man. And I'd urge anyone who ends up listening to this to just believe in yourself and to overcome your struggles. It's so important for you to get through that dark period, that hopelessness, because you really come out of it on the other side a better person, a more intelligent person, I think, a more well-rounded person. And music was a big part of that. Music was a big part of overcoming my struggles. Art in general was a huge part of it. Um, I can talk about that more if you want.
Please talk about that more.
Yeah, so art. So the reason the art is important is because it's a way of expressing certain emotions, stories, sentiments, and early on in life, the the art that let's say kids consume is very joyful, very happy, and I think that's good. It can be good for kids. It's a way to just become a cheerful person. Being happy and being optimistic is very valuable in life. Um, and as you get older, you discover more mature versions of art, more deeper thinking movies, more powerful types of music that hit you in ways that let's say art kind of designed for kids or marketed for kids can't hit. And I guess to round it out, because of the types of stories art can tell, particularly in my situation, art where it's about overcoming adversity. Movies like The Gray by Joe Carnahan, that's a huge one for me. Music like, strangely enough, Eminem. That guy was pretty monumental. Just seeing someone who could craft a song in a way that exemplified how the types of struggles they overcame and to feel it through the music. So when I was struggling, just the various pieces of art that exist really helped me out a lot.
If you could tell yourself something 5 years ago in the past, what would you tell yourself?
I'll tell myself that I'm doing well, that you're taking important steps, and that even though things seem hard and they seem like a struggle, you'll end up being a more mature person, a more capable person, as long as you push through your struggles and difficulties.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Hopefully healthier. This whole coronavirus pandemic has impacted my life personally in certain ways. Um, and everything's just very up in the air right now. I have no idea what's going to happen. So 5 years is kind of hard to predict. I'll just say that I hope I'm working hard, keeping in touch with friends, and I'm just doing my best.
How has COVID-19 impacted you?
So the pandemic impacted me pretty significantly in terms of the direction I wanted to go in my life. I thought I'd be working a job, and being independent. COVID has impacted me by definitely screwing up my plans. I had a bunch of plans, um, ideas I had planned to pursue, and because of the pandemic, because things were locked down, and personally because of some health issues now, Um, I just can't pursue my life the way I had intended, and it was a very key time in my life too. But I guess everyone always thinks that. I guess every moment in your life is a key moment, but uh, it's made my life harder. Let's just say that.
What are your thoughts on the country's response to the pandemic?
So the pandemic, the government response to the pandemic. I mean, it is a hard situation just to navigate through. But I personally would have liked it if it was taken a bit more seriously early on. I think, yeah, it's. I don't believe in shutting things down. I'm not sure if that's the best course, especially because of how it can affect people's mentalities, particularly those suffering from, mental health issues, things of that sort. Um, so yeah, I'm not sure if I support everything being shut down, but I would have liked to see a bit more seriousness in maybe just the culture of awareness regarding the virus, because I feel like the government, it's important for the government to kind of set a standard, and then the citizens will take that into consideration and then make their decisions, because we're a free country, and I really believe in that concept of like freedom and things of that, um, in that manner. And so I guess I would have to say I am a bit upset about the way things were handled, um, and I would have preferred things to have been handled a little better.
And you said that it's a detriment to people's mental health. This will impact depression rates, and so many people are going to commit suicide because they won't be able to pay their bills. What are your thoughts on this?
It's sad. It's really sad. It's you bring up a good point, and because the thing, it's hard. I guess that's the hard thing about all this is that I know how badly this virus can affect people, but then when you look at the broad numbers, a lot of people are going to be okay. Now, that's not to say we shouldn't have that culture of being mindful about not going out if you have been in contact with someone um, who has the virus confirmed. Masks, I suppose, pretty sure masks work. That's at least what the science says from what I've read. It's Yeah, it's sad. It's a sad situation. It's a difficult situation. I think I think it sucks that people can't make a living when there are a lot of people who are asymptomatic. It seems like I don't know how accurate I am in that assessment. But I think at a certain point we should be able to choose what to do, but there should be a culture around being mindful and being more respectful about spreading the virus potentially.
Health experts like Dr. Anthony Fauci have stated that society will go back to normal by the end of 2021. What do you think this means for the future of musicians?
I don't know. Musicians are in a tough spot. You know, it's artists in general. I would say probably are hit the most. Small businesses are hit the most. For musicians, luckily there are online platforms where you can spread your music. But I have heard that musicians make a lot of their income through touring, so it's going to be hard for musicians. It's not going to be pretty, I think. at least for I don't know. I guess till 2021, end of 2021, whatever. Whenever this ends.
And many businesses are already closing down because of lack of stimulus checks. What are your thoughts on the lack of stimulus checks that are being given to the hands of the American people?
I think that's crazy. I think, from what I've heard, it's nonpartisan, or it's bipartisan in the sense that both sides agreed to more stimulus checks, more or less, at least the American citizens, I believe. And yeah, the response doesn't seem to be the best, uh, especially considering how I'm not too knowledgeable, but the House and the Senate, how they end up agreeing on things is through mutual conversations, through mutual agreements, through compromise, and the fact that they can't come to a compromise is sad. And I was a supporter of Andrew Yang, and so the whole idea of concept of a stimulus check, I think, ties in well with a lot of his beliefs. So I'm a pretty big supporter in stimulus checks, as long as they're reasonable, as long as they're given out properly. So Andrew Yang was someone I believed in, and he had an idea called the universal basic income. He labeled it the freedom dividend, and it was a plan to give every American citizen $1,000 a month over the age of 18, $1,000 a month. And it seems like a crazy idea, but compared to a lot of the systems that are in place now, I think it would be a smarter, less bloated solution. There are some issues, I think, with welfare. And there are some legitimate issues with the fact that when you start at zero or near zero, it's definitely harder to move up in the ladder. And so that's how the stimulus checks relate to Andrew Yang, because it was kind of funny. Like, he ran on trying to give everyone $1,000 a month, and then suddenly this pandemic hits, and it makes a lot of sense to give people money, and it's kind of the reason you want a UBI in place, because if a situation like this had occurred and we had had a system like that in place, we wouldn't have to rely on the government. We wouldn't have to be waiting on a stimulus check.
What tends to be the hardest part about being a musician, in your opinion?
What tasks? What was the question?
What tends to be the hardest part about being a musician, in your opinion?
For me personally, it's the discipline. Like, I think that's the reason I took so long to get into music the way I am into it now. If you don't have great discipline and the ability to practice and practice properly, you're not going to be a great musician. So, to everyone who thinks you can rock and roll your way into being a great guitarist, you can't. It takes practice, it takes dedication, it takes hours and hours per day, and it's something I still don't have, and I try to emulate and do now, because I didn't do it as a teenager.
Do you look up to any current artists in particular?
Yeah, right now, Bob Seger. I love Bob Seger. That man. That man's like America's heart, is what I call him. I like him a lot because his music is very interpretive, I think, in the sense that there's a song called Turn the Page that I've been loving a lot lately, which is supposed to be about it's about the life of a musician. It's about being on the road. It's about being in uh, states you haven't been in before, like U.S. states, um, and just the life of a roadman, basically. But to me, it's about like the hardships of life, the situations we find ourselves in, and the difficulties that can arise, and how it's important to turn the page. It's important to move forward. It's important to keep moving forward, keep on going forward. So Bob Seger's a big one lately.
Because of this pandemic, many are just starting to leave large cities like Los Angeles. Are you considering leaving? Are you considering leaving anytime in the future?
In the far future, maybe. I always thought about leaving Los Angeles um, for the sake of. I feel like city life is kind of a double edged sword. You get to do a lot of things that are super cool that people don't normally get to do in smaller towns or, um, other places. I don't see it anytime soon, but eventually. Not necessarily because of the pandemic, although the pandemic does tie in with it. It's just there's something valuable I think about like a small town community and being able to know everyone and talk to your neighbors. I suppose we could do that here, but the culture is just kind of different out in Los Angeles.
How is the culture different outside of Los Angeles?
I feel like it's a little more cutthroat. You can definitely meet people, but I feel like it takes a little more effort. Uh, I spent some time in a more kind of smaller town area for the first time earlier this year, and people are just a lot. They seem more pleasant. They seem more willing to engage and talk to each other. Casual small talk. I think it's that when there's so few people in the town, or less than Los Angeles, you long for a human connection. You long to talk to people. But then in a city like Los Angeles or San Francisco or New York, like bigger cities, there's so many people. You don't really feel that need. And the issue with that is that you don't connect as often. You don't, unless you actively pursue that. Yeah, those are my thoughts on it. I don't know if I answered the question. I forgot the question.
Do you think the overpopulation in Los Angeles what exacerbates the homeless crisis?
That's that's the that's an interesting question, actually. It's possible. It, maybe it could be like a culture thing where small towns would look out for people more. Possibly, I think I'm totally stereotyping here. I have no idea if that's true. On a more uh, on a more grounded perspective, I think it's more policy, probably. Like things are just too expensive, and it's like I mentioned earlier. It's hard to pull yourself out of zero, and man, I don't know if I'm right about this, but I recall seeing how the police can't interfere with the homeless population, something like that. They can't obstruct these tent cities that are popping up because it's against human rights or something like that. And I get that. I get that these people have no place to live. But I don't think the solution should be to foster and encourage the tent cities. Like we can have a better solution. And I don't know. To me, Andrew Yang was that better solution. It's that every American citizen, no matter what, will not be at zero. That zero is so hard to pull yourself out of. It's you feel hopeless. It's when you're at zero. You have no hopes and you have no aspirations. It's. I'm I'm positive there are even studies done that show that your mental cognition is lowered if you're at zero, like at a lower financial um, status.